Welcome to our deep dive into Caballo de Troya 5, Caesarea.
Oh, this is going to be interesting.
It is, right? It's by J J Benítez,
Right.
and we're going to be unpacking excerpts from this Spanish-language historical fiction novel.
Right.
It follows a time traveler embedded with Jesus and his followers.
Oh.
So a pretty interesting concept, I think.
Yeah.
It blends historical detail with some really imaginative storytelling.
For sure.
What do you think about this one so far?
Well, it's definitely not just like a simple retelling of biblical events.
Right.
It's more like we're experiencing these events through the eyes of an outsider,
Yeah.
like somebody from the future.
Yeah.
And I think that adds just layers of intrigue and suspense.
Definitely. Speaking of suspense,
Yeah.
the novel starts with the time traveler and his companion, David.
Okay.
They're trapped in this underground chamber.
Mm-hmm.
And what really struck me was just how meticulous Benítez is.
Yeah.
With all the details of the chamber, describing, its size, the white plaster, even this central limestone ridge.
Yeah.
It's almost like he wants us as readers
Yeah.
to feel that claustrophobia of being stuck underground.
Uh-huh.
Do you think that level of detail is important for a fictional setting?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Hmm?
It creates such a strong sense of realism,
Mm-hmm.
and it really transports you
Right.
to that time and place.
Yeah.
Think about it. Like,
Yeah.
if you were suddenly, thrown back in time,
Yeah.
wouldn't those small details
For sure.
of your surroundings
Yeah.
feel super heightened?
Yes.
Benitez's writing just makes the whole story so immersive,
Right.
even though we know it's fictional.
I agree. It really pulls you in.
Yeah.
And then you've got the whole concept of the time traveler experiencing this psychic hangover
Okay.
from his journey through time.
Ah,
He actually calls it mass inversion.
interesting.
And it's this disconnect between the conscious and subconscious mind.
Mhm.
As a reader, that made me think, if time travel were really possible,
Right.
what kind of toll would it take on the human mind?
That's a fascinating question.
Yeah.
Benitez describes this mass inversion
Mhm.
as like a side effect of time travel, almost like a glitch in the system.
Uh-huh.
And it really affects the time traveler.
Yeah.
And how he sees things, how he acts.
Right.
He even starts to question his own sanity.
Wow.
So if you were experiencing that mental disconnect,
Mm-hmm.
how do you think it would affect how you understand the events
Yeah.
you're actually witnessing?
That's a good point. It would definitely make it hard to trust your own senses.
Yeah, for sure.
And speaking of things that are hard to understand,
Uh-huh.
there are all these weird, intriguing clues
Oh, wait.
throughout these early chapters.
Right.
Like, for example, the sandal and the sacks.
Mhm.
They find those in another underground chamber.
Mm-hmm.
But what's strange is
Yeah.
this silo that they find that's usually used for grain
Right.
is filled with stones
Mm.
instead of grain.
Mm.
And then on top of that, there's this really valuable sandal
Okay.
that's just abandoned there.
Hmm.
Why draw attention to details like that?
Well, I think the details are very deliberate.
Okay.
They could be foreshadowing,
Mm.
maybe even red herrings.
Yeah.
But either way, Benitez is definitely trying to keep us guessing.
Right.
It's like he's presenting us with a puzzle box.
Yeah.
And we're not sure which pieces fit together yet.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is where I think things get really intense.
Okay.
The time traveler ends up witnessing this really violent confrontation
Oh.
between James, the brother of Jesus, and his Sadducee priest.
Right.
And the details, I have to say, they're pretty graphic.
Okay.
You've got the priest's stomach is crushed,
Wow.
an iron weapon, a torn tunic.
Oh, my goodness.
It's brutal, and it really highlights the simmering tension
Yeah.
and the dangers of this world.
Mm.
Do you think that scene is an accurate reflection of the historical relationship?
Between the Sadducees and Jesus's followers.
Well, it's definitely a very dramatic representation of the power dynamics that were at play
Right.
historically.
Yeah.
The Sadducees, they were this powerful group
Mm-hmm.
within Jewish society.
Right.
And they often clash
Right.
with Jesus and his followers.
Yeah.
So this scene could be like a microcosm
Hmm.
of the bigger conflict
Right.
that was brewing between them.
Okay.
Remember, Benítez is writing fiction,
Yeah.
but he's also drawing on historical context
Right.
to ground the story.
So it feels real.
Yeah.
It definitely makes it feel more real.
Mhm.
And then you have the incident where the time traveler's own belongings
Oh, okay.
go missing, his sandals
Mhm.
and a waterproof bag that had money in it.
Uh-huh.
And I was kind of surprised by how he gets them back.
How?
It's not like a direct confrontation with whoever stole them.
Yeah.
He actually encounters James, who took the stuff.
Okay.
And it turns out it was that Sadducee priest from the earlier scene.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a tangled web.
Right.
It is.
But it also shows that the time traveler, he's not invincible.
Right.
He's reliant on other people to help him out in this unfamiliar time.
Yeah.
It raises questions about the theft, too.
Yeah.
Like, was it just greed?
Right.
Or was it something more sinister?
That's a good question.
Yeah, and then you've got this growing tension between the time traveler and John, who's one of Jesus' disciples. It seems like John just has this grudge against the time traveler.
Interesting.
But it's not totally clear why right away.
Yeah.
It unfolds gradually, kind of like a slow burn. What do you make of John's hostility?
Well, we get some hints later in the excerpts.
Okay.
But for now, it's still kind of a mystery.
Yeah.
But it definitely adds to that suspense.
Right.
And makes you wonder
how that relationship is going to play out.
It kept me on the edge of my seat.
Okay.
And then there's a fire.
A fire.
At Mary's house.
Yeah.
So Mary, the mother of Jesus. It's a little hazy how it starts.
Yeah.
But it seems like it starts in the workshop.
Yeah.
And all the characters are reacting with fear and urgency.
Of course.
But the time traveler, he kind of holds back. He has this non-intervention code.
Interesting.
So he could have helped,
right?
But he didn't.
Yeah.
I found that really frustrating.
I can see why.
What would you have done?
Oh, man.
If you were in his position?
Well, it's a tough situation.
Yeah.
He wants to help.
Right.
But his mission protocols are holding him back.
It really highlights these ethical dilemmas that he has to face. You know, he's just an observer in this historical drama.
Right.
Makes you think, though, if you could travel back in time, would you interfere? Even if it meant changing history? That's a really good question.
Yeah.
It is a tough one.
It is.
But the fire's not the only drama.
Oh, no?
Because then John actually accuses the time traveler of causing Mary's injury.
During the fire?
Yeah, during all the chaos.
Oh, man.
It feels like he's just adding fuel to the fire of his existing prejudice.
Yeah, that accusation, it says a lot about trust.
Right.
And how people perceive things.
Yeah.
Is John twisting the truth on purpose?
Yeah.
To fit his own narrative?
It makes you wonder what's really going on.
It does.
Yeah, absolutely. And then to get away from all that tension and the accusations, the time traveler decides to distance himself from the group. He just takes off on his own.
Feeling disillusioned?
Yeah, and betrayed.
Wow. What a cliffhanger.
I know, right?
To end part 1.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I know.
I can't wait to see what happens next.
Me too.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how this period of solitude affects the time traveler.
Yeah.
And his perspective on everything that's happening. I can't wait to find out.
Me neither.
And listeners, stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive.
Okay.
We're going to follow the time traveler on his solo journey.
Sounds good.
And we'll see how he navigates this really complex world.
Can't wait. So as the time traveler journeys on his own, we start to see him really observe the people and customs around him.
Yeah, like he becomes this anthropologist from the future, taking notes on everything.
Right.
And I thought it was interesting how Benítez weaves in those historical facts about daily life in Roman-occupied Judea. It's like you get a crash course in ancient history.
For sure.
You know, the clothing, the food, the social hierarchies.
Yeah, what stood out to you about this part?
I found it fascinating, the contrast between the simplicity of Jesus and his followers with the extravagance of Roman society.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like that lavish banquet that Pilate hosted.
Oh, yeah, that was crazy.
Right. Talk about a stark contrast.
Yeah, definitely.
You really get a sense of just the decadence and the gap between the haves and have-nots.
Yeah, for sure.
But getting back to the time traveler, he doesn't just observe.
Right.
He also puts his advanced technology to use.
Okay.
There's that scene where he uses a laser to cut stones, and another where he heals a child with medicine from his campaign kit.
Right.
I mean, can you imagine?
It must seem like magic.
Right.
Yeah.
Does Benítez cross a line, though? By blending science fiction with historical fiction?
That's a good question. I think it's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
He is writing a fictional story.
Right.
But it does make you think about the ethics of using advanced technology in the past.
Yeah.
Even the time traveler struggles with that.
Yeah.
He wants to help.
Right.
But he also knows there could be consequences to interfering with the past.
So what do you think? If you had that technology back then, would you use it?
Oh, man. That's a tough one.
Right.
Yeah.
Even knowing you could change the course of history.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a tough call.
It is.
But the time traveler's journey isn't all philosophical.
Right.
He has that encounter with those Roman soldiers.
Oh, yeah, when he needs to get into Caesarea.
Right.
That was intense.
And he ends up manipulating them.
It does.
To get in.
Yeah.
Which shows how resourceful he is.
He is.
And quick thinking. He's like a master of improvisation.
Mm-hmm. Using his knowledge of the future to help him out.
Yeah.
I guess it's a reminder that even in situations that we're not familiar with, we can still adapt.
Yeah.
And find ways to overcome obstacles.
So good to know.
And all of that just to meet Pontius Pilate.
I know. Talk about a historical figure to come face to face with.
Yeah. What did you think about Benítez's portrayal of Pilate?
Well, he's definitely unstable. Maybe even mentally ill.
Yeah. A little different than the more stoic version we usually see.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely a departure.
Mm-hmm.
He portrays him as really erratic and prone to fits of cruelty.
Yeah.
Which makes you wonder about his judgment and what his motivations are.
Yeah.
Remember that scene where he gets splattered with blood and brains?
Oh, at the banquet?
Yeah, during the banquet. That was bizarre.
Yeah, I found that a little over the top.
Yeah.
But it does emphasize how volatile he could be.
For sure.
And then there's Claudia Procla.
Palladi's wife.
Right. And it's interesting. She has these vivid dreams that seem prophetic. Like she's troubled by this one dream.
Oh, yeah. The one about a child being killed with swords.
Right. And she sees it as this bad omen.
Yeah. Do you think those dreams are supposed to be taken literally?
That's a good question.
Or are they more symbolic?
It could be both, right?
Yeah.
Benítez uses a lot of foreshadowing and suspense. So it could be a warning of the violence to come.
Yeah.
Or it could represent something more symbolic.
Like what?
Like the death of innocence or foreshadowing Jesus' crucifixion.
That's a good point.
What do you think?
It's hard to say for sure.
All right.
But it definitely adds this mystical element to the story.
It does. And then what about that phrase, 3,000 days?
Oh, yeah, that keeps popping up.
In Claudia's dreams.
Yeah.
And in the artwork in her chamber.
Right, like a countdown to something big.
Right. Does Benítez ever reveal what it means?
Well, that's the enigma, right?
Yeah.
He leaves it open to interpretation.
Yeah.
Which just adds to the mystery and that feeling of foreboding.
Right.
It makes you think about the power of symbols.
Yeah.
And how they can make you feel different things.
Yeah, and how different people can interpret them differently.
Exactly.
It's interesting, too, how Benítez touches on the idea of Jesus' resurrection. And the idea that he could maybe manipulate his atomic structure. It's like he's trying to give a scientific explanation for what most consider a miraculous event.
Right.
Do you think that diminishes this story?
Not necessarily. I think he's trying to explore the intersection of science and faith.
Okay.
He's not saying one is right or wrong.
Right.
Just presenting different perspectives, letting the reader decide what they believe.
So, like, he's saying, here are some possibilities.
Yeah.
You figure out what makes sense to you.
Exactly.
I like that approach.
It is pretty thought-provoking.
It is.
Makes you think for yourself.
It does. But where does all this leave the time traveler?
That's a good question.
He's gained Pilate's trust.
Right.
But the governor's erratic behavior is a constant threat.
Yeah, he needs to find a way out of Caesarea and get back to his mission.
Yeah.
Do you think he can pull it off?
Well, that's what we'll find out in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll uncover the secrets of Claudia Procla's dream.
All right.
And see how the time traveler escapes from Caesarea and explore more of that clash between faith and technology.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we left off with the time traveler in a pretty precarious situation.
Yeah. Stuck in the midst of Roman extravagance and a governor who's, well, little on edge.
Definitely not the ideal situation.
Right.
So what happens next?
Well, things get really intense.
Okay.
Remember Claudia Procla's dream? The one with the child and the swords?
Yeah.
It kind of foreshadows what happens at the banquet.
Right, because things go from bad to worse.
Oh, yeah. It's not just a bad dream. The banquet actually descends into total chaos.
What happens?
Someone releases wild animals into the dining hall.
Wild animals? Like what?
Yeah, you name it. Lions, tigers.
Seriously, I can't even imagine.
It's a scene of pure pandemonium.
Wow.
Guests are scrambling, swords clashing.
Oh, my goodness.
And the time traveler's right in the middle of it all.
So how does he get out of there?
He's a lot more resourceful than you might think.
Okay.
He manages to escape with help from Civilis.
Oh, the Roman centurion.
Yeah, the one who we mentioned before.
Yeah, right.
The one who seemed to be a bit sympathetic towards him.
Yeah.
Civilis gives him a disguise and a horse.
That's pretty lucky.
Yeah, and a 5-day head start.
A head start for what?
Before Civilis has to report him as a fugitive.
Oh, wow. It's a really narrow escape.
Yeah, it is.
So where does he go? Does he go back to Jesus and his followers?
No, actually, he heads back to Nazareth.
Nazareth, okay.
He feels this pull to revisit the place where he spent so much time.
Right, with Jesus and his followers.
Exactly. It's like coming full circle after the chaos of Caesarea.
Makes sense.
He's looking for some grounding.
But he doesn't get a very warm welcome, does he?
No, unfortunately not.
What happens?
He's met with hostility, suspicion.
Oh, wow.
He overhears John accusing him of being a pagan and a sorcerer.
Oh, that's pretty ironic, considering where he's actually from.
It seems John's animosity really stems from that misunderstanding.
Right, about Mary's injury during the fire.
Yeah, it is.
Such a miscommunication created this rift.
Yeah, especially when they both seem to care about Jesus.
Exactly. It really highlights the power of perception and how easily misunderstandings can happen.
It does.
Yeah, it really does.
So what ends up happening to the time traveler?
No.
Does he get back to his own time?
That's the thing. We don't really get a definitive answer in these excerpts.
Really?
It leaves us hanging a bit.
That's frustrating.
Yeah, but it also makes you think.
Yeah, I guess so.
The last we see him, he's reflecting on everything that's happened.
Yeah.
Trying to make sense of it all.
Right.
But his ultimate fate remains a mystery.
Wow, so it's like this massive information overload for him.
It is, and maybe that's the point.
Interesting.
To leave us with questions.
Yeah.
Make us consider what we do in his situation.
So, looking back on this deep dive,
Yeah.
what do you think is the biggest takeaway?
I think, for me, it's the exploration of faith and doubt. That clash between ancient and modern perspectives. Yeah, that's really interesting.
It's about questioning what we think we know.
Right.
Facing the unknown.
Yeah.
And grappling with the complexities of being human.
Right. And those are all themes that are still so relevant today.
They are.
This has been a fascinating look into this really thought-provoking world.
It has.
Blending history, science fiction, and spiritual exploration.
Yeah.
If you're interested in learning more, you should definitely check out Caballo de Troya 5 by J J Benítez.
It's a wild ride.
It is. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.